Amy Roloff on what she learned from her first marriage and why she chose to wed on her ex's farm exclusive. Hello viewers, I am Alana. Welcome back to my channel, USA Daily History for Roloff family latest news update. Please subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon. For years, Amy Roloff has opened her life to millions of viewers through Little People, Big World. From raising 4 kids with ex-husband Matt Roloff to finding love again with Marek, Amy's journey has been filled with lessons, heartbreak, and second chances. In this exclusive, Amy candidly reflects on what her first marriage taught her and why, despite the emotional weight of her past, she ultimately decided to marry her new love on the very farm she once called home with Matt. Amy and Matt Roloff became household names in 2006 when Little People, Big World first aired on TLC. Fans were captivated by the dynamic duo and their children Zach, Jeremy, Molly, and Jacob living life on Roloff farms in Oregon. But as the years passed, the cracks in Amy and Matt's marriage began to show. In 2015, after 27 years together, they announced their separation. It wasn't easy to end something I thought would last forever, Amy admits. But looking back, I know I wouldn't be who I am now without that chapter. I realized we were working with each other but not for each other anymore, she says. I stayed quiet for too long, letting little resentments grow into something we couldn't fix. She credits therapy and her close friendships for helping her see how important it is to speak up for her needs, something she vowed to do differently if she ever found love again. In 2016, a year after finalizing her divorce, Amy met Marek, a real estate agent who didn't know much about the Little People, Big World fame at first. He was so genuine. He didn't see me as Amy Roloff from TV, he just saw Amy. She gushes. Their courtship wasn't always easy. Amy has spoken openly about her insecurities after divorce fears that she wasn't enough or that she'd fail at love again. Chris made it clear from the start. He was in this with me, she says. I learned that trust means being vulnerable. That was a huge takeaway from my first marriage. I had to be brave enough to really let Chris in. In 2019, Chris proposed to Amy at their favorite restaurant. She said yes through happy tears. But immediately, a big question loomed. Where would they tie the knot? Amy had already moved off the farm after her divorce, buying her own house in Hillsboro. But the idea of holding her wedding somewhere new felt disconnected. The farm was a place of so many memories, she says. It's where I raised my kids. It was still the place they thought of as home. After much debate and conversations with Matt and her children, Amy decided to marry Chris at Roloff Farms. It was emotional. It wasn't about going back to the past, it was about honoring the parts of my life that shaped me, Amy shares. I wanted my kids to feel at home. I wanted to walk down that aisle knowing I survived a lot to get here. Of course, there was one obvious elephant in the room. Matt still owns and lives on the farm. He and his then-girlfriend Karen Chandler, who once worked as the farm's manager, were present during the wedding planning. There were definitely moments where it felt awkward, Amy admits. But I made a decision early on. This was my day with Chris. I couldn't let old dynamics overshadow what we were building together. Amy credits her kids for being a bridge between their parents. Zach and Jeremy were amazing. They helped make sure everyone felt comfortable, and that meant a lot to me. On August 28, 2021, Amy and Chris said, I do, surrounded by friends, family, and rolling fields that had once been the backdrop of so much of Amy's life. She wore a romantic A-line gown with lace sleeves, while Chris opted for a classic gray suit. The couple exchanged heartfelt vows under a rustic arbor covered in flowers. When I looked at Chris, I didn't see my past. I saw my future, Amy says. The celebration was intimate yet lively, with laughter, dancing, and plenty of cake. I felt the love. Not just from Chris, but from my family, my kids, my friends. It was everything I hoped it would be. Now, a few years into her second marriage, Amy feels more confident than ever. I learned that love doesn't mean losing yourself. It's about growing together, but also growing individually, she reflects. She says her biggest regret from her first marriage was not advocating for herself. I stayed quiet to keep the peace. Now I know that peace doesn't come from silence, it comes from honesty. Amy hopes her story shows others that it's never too late to start over. You're never too old to find love again, she says. And you're never too old to learn something new about yourself. Amy and Matt continue to co-parent and navigate their blended family dynamic. She says things aren't always smooth, but they've learned to respect each other's new lives. We'll always be connected through our kids and the farm. That's our legacy, and I think we both want it to be a happy one, Amy says. She's also formed her own traditions with Chris, traveling, cooking together, and spending quality time with their grandkids. Amy remains grateful for her fans, many of whom have watched her journey for nearly 2 decades. They've seen me at my best and my worst, she laughs. I hope they see that life doesn't end when something breaks. Sometimes it's the broken pieces that make you stronger. As for what's next, Amy says she's focused on cherishing each moment, whether that's filming new episodes, working on her baking business, or just enjoying a glass of wine with Chris in their backyard. I spent years planning for a future that didn't turn out how I thought it would, she says. Now, I'm planning less and living more. Amy Roloff on what she learned from her first marriage and why she chose to wed on her ex's farm exclusive. When Amy Roloff, star of TLC's Little People, Big World, walked down the aisle again in 2021, she wasn't just stepping into a new chapter with her now husband Chris Marek. She was also stepping onto familiar ground. Her ex-husband Matt Roloff's iconic Roloff Farms in Oregon. The decision sparked curiosity, praise, and plenty of questions from fans who have followed Amy's journey for nearly 2 decades. Why would Amy choose to marry her new love on the same land she once shared with Matt? What did she carry forward from her first marriage, and how did she learn to open her heart again? In this exclusive feature, we'll take you inside Amy's reflections on love, divorce, growth, and the unique bond she still shares with a place that witnessed both heartbreak and healing. Before reality TV cameras rolled into her life, Amy Jo Knight was just a small-town girl with big dreams. Growing up in Michigan, Amy learned resilience early. Being a little person in an average-sized world wasn't always easy. But she was determined never to let her stature define her limits. In college, Amy met Matt Roloff at a Little People of America convention. Sparks flew quickly. Within months, they were engaged, and in September 1987, they exchanged vows. Together, they built a life on an idea that seemed larger than life: Roloff Farms. The sprawling 100-acre property in Hillsboro, Oregon, became not just their home, but a place where the Roloffs could show the world what family meant to them, dwarfism and all. Their marriage would eventually produce 4 children: twins, Jeremy and Zach, Molly, and Jacob, and a hit reality show that catapulted them to fame. But behind the scenes, their relationship faced the same trials that test any couple, amplified by the demands of parenting, farming, and filming. When Little People, Big World debuted in 2006, viewers fell in love with Amy's honesty, warmth, and unfiltered approach to life's challenges. But as the years went by, audiences also witnessed the strain between Amy and Matt. The farm, once a symbol of shared dreams, began to feel like a wedge. Matt's ambitious visions for expanding Roloff Farms clashed with Amy's desire for more balance and less stress. Their differences in communication style, Matt's assertive, big-picture approach versus Amy's detail-oriented, sometimes reserved demeanor, often led to misunderstandings. By 2015, after 27 years of marriage, Amy and Matt announced their separation. In a world where divorce can be bitter, their decision was remarkably mature. They would co-parent, co-manage the farm, and continue filming together. For Amy, it was a test of her resolve and an unexpected chance to rediscover herself. Looking back, Amy says her first marriage taught her more than she ever expected about compromise, forgiveness, and self-worth. In the years following her split from Matt, Amy moved off the main farm and into her own home nearby. She made it her sanctuary, a place where she could breathe, reflect, and figure out what she wanted the next phase of her life to look like. "I didn't regret the years I spent with Matt," she said. "We built a beautiful family. But I also had to acknowledge that it was time to move forward. Enter Marek, a real estate agent with an easy smile and a patient heart. Amy met Chris at a singles paint and sip event, which she almost didn't attend. It was her friends who convinced her to give it a shot. Little did she know that one night would reshape her life. Chris, who had never dated a little person before, wasn't intimidated by Amy's TV fame or her complicated past. He was drawn to her authenticity and her spirit. Their courtship was slow, deliberate, and refreshingly drama-free. Amy taught me about family, about loving someone for exactly who they are, Chris said in an interview. She's strong, independent, but also so open-hearted. For Amy, falling in love again wasn't without its fears. She worried about how her kids would react, how the public would perceive her moving on, and whether she could trust her heart again. But Chris was patient. He showed her that love didn't have to be loud and chaotic. It could be quiet, steady, and safe. When Chris popped the question in 2019, Amy was overjoyed but also faced a big decision. Where to say I do. The Roloff Farms, by then, had become not just the Roloff's livelihood, but a beloved landmark for millions of fans. It held decades of memories, birthday parties, pumpkin seasons, weddings, and family feuds. To some, it might have seemed the last place Amy would choose for her second wedding. But for Amy, the farm was bigger than her past with Matt. It was her children's childhood home, a place that symbolized resilience, family ties, and the roots she helped plant. I didn't want to run away from my past, Amy explained in an interview. I wanted to celebrate what this place means to me and my family, not just the marriage that ended here, but the life we built. And it was important for my kids to feel connected to it too. Chris, ever supportive, embraced her choice. They worked closely with Matt to arrange the details. Yes, Matt Roloff offered up the farm for the celebration, proving that sometimes life's chapters can overlap in beautiful, complicated ways. On August 28, 2021, Amy and Chris exchanged vows on a warm Oregon afternoon. Family and close friends gathered under a canopy of twinkling lights, surrounded by the rolling fields Amy had once tended as a wife and mom. The wedding was intimate yet festive, balancing rustic charm with personal touches that reflected Amy's journey. There were nods to the past, but the focus was firmly on the future. Amy walked down the aisle with her father, Gordon Knight, who was 92 at the time, a moment she'd long dreamed of. It was perfect, Amy later said, beaming. It wasn't about starting over, it was about continuing my story. Marrying on the farm didn't erase the complexities of Amy's relationship with Matt. Over the years, they've learned to coexist, co-grandparent, and co-manage family traditions. Sometimes, it's awkward. Sometimes, it's surprisingly easy. Amy has been open about how hard it was to let go of her identity as Mrs. Roloff, but she's also proud of who she's become as Amy Marek. Her kids, now adults, have been supportive, even when navigating blended family gatherings or dealing with the farm's ongoing business decisions. And for Amy, the farm remains a bittersweet symbol. Part of her past, part of her children's future, and proof that sometimes you can't completely separate where you've been from where you're going. At 60, Amy Roloff is still learning, growing, and inviting fans along for the ride. She continues to film Little People, Big World, run her online baking business, and share snippets of her life with Chris through social media. She still makes time for her beloved grandkids, the next generation of Roloffs, who remind her why every hard lesson and every brave choice was worth it. If I could tell my younger self anything, Amy says now, it would be, don't be afraid to speak up for what you want. Don't settle for less than you deserve. And don't let fear keep you from loving again. Amy's story resonates with anyone who's ever had to start over, face the past head-on, and believe that joy can come around twice. Her choice to wed on her ex's farm wasn't about the land, it was about the roots she planted long ago and the new growth she's nurturing now. I learned that life doesn't tie everything up in a neat bow, Amy says. It's messy, beautiful, and worth it. And love, real love, is always worth taking a chance on, no matter how many times you've been hurt. Why Amy Roloff, Chris didn't invite Matt, Karen to their wedding, in August 2021. Little people. Big World fans witnessed one of the most talked about moments in Roloff family history. Amy Roloff marrying Chris Marek on the iconic Roloff farms. But there was an undeniable tension buzzing behind the beautiful ceremony. Her ex-husband, Matt Roloff, and his longtime girlfriend, Karen Chandler, were not on the guest list. For longtime viewers, this sparked questions. Why were Matt and Karen not there? Was it awkward? Was it a snub? Or simply the best choice for everyone? In this deep dive, we'll unravel the complex dynamics that led to Amy and Chris's controversial decision, explore what the key players have said, and look at how the family navigated the tricky balance of love, loyalty, and letting go. Amy and Matt Roloff were once the heart of Little People, Big World. The show, which premiered in 2006, showcased the couple raising their 4 children, Jeremy, Zach, Molly, and Jacob, while managing the 100-acre Roloff Farms in Oregon. Over the years, fans saw the couple's bond evolve from business partners to embattled exes. Their marriage hit the rocks publicly in 2015 when they announced their separation. By 2016, the divorce was finalized. The split was far from smooth. Both Amy and Matt admitted that their communication had deteriorated, resentment had built up, and the pressure of the show didn't help. Meanwhile, Matt's relationship with Karen Chandler, who had worked as the farm's manager for over a decade, became a point of contention. Rumors swirled that Karen and Matt were romantically involved before the divorce was final, something that deeply hurt Amy and fractured trust within the family. Karen wasn't just Matt's new girlfriend, she was also someone Amy had known for years. Karen had worked closely with the Roloff family, managing events, pumpkin season, and helping to run Roloff Farms smoothly. For Amy, having her ex-husband's new partner be an ex-employee and friend was a bitter pill to swallow. In her memoir, A Little Me, Amy opened up about feeling blindsided by how quickly Matt and Karen's relationship progressed. She revealed that she felt betrayed by both Matt and Karen. This lingering tension never truly dissipated, even as Amy moved on with her own love story. After the heartbreak of marriage ending, Amy met Chris Marek at a singles mixer. Chris, a real estate agent, had never watched Little People, Big World, and had no prior connection to the Roloff universe. For Amy, this was refreshing. Their relationship blossomed quickly. Chris proved to be supportive, patient, and genuinely invested in Amy's happiness. They got engaged in 2019, and wedding planning began. But there was one major twist: the location. Despite the complicated emotions tied to Roloff Farms, Amy and Chris chose to marry there. The farm, though now owned by Matt, held decades of memories for Amy. It was where she raised her kids, built traditions, and carved out her own legacy. After selling her portion of the farm back to Matt, Amy had to coordinate with her ex to host her dream wedding there. This was a test of boundaries and civility, but some boundaries were non-negotiable. Amy made it clear early on, she didn't want her ex and his girlfriend at the wedding, but why? In interviews and on the show, Amy has addressed the decision candidly. She explained that she didn't feel it would be appropriate to have Matt and Karen at the wedding because it was her and Chris's special day, and the presence of her ex and his partner might overshadow that. In an episode of Little People, Big World, Amy told producers, "Chris and I are planning our wedding, and to be perfectly honest, I don't see how having Matt and Karen there would make sense. It's a day about us, and there are still a lot of raw feelings. Why complicate it?" Chris Marek fully supported Amy's choice, saying that inviting Matt and Karen would add unnecessary stress. Chris even told Amy, "This is your day. You do not need to feel obligated." While some fans assumed Matt and Karen might have been offended, they both publicly supported Amy and Chris's decision. In fact, Matt himself offered the farm as a wedding venue, but also agreed that not attending would probably keep the day peaceful. "It makes sense. Karen and I don't need to be there." That day should be about Amy and Chris. Karen echoed similar sentiments. She acknowledged that Amy and she have never had a warm friendship since the divorce. The air might never fully clear, so why bring that energy into a wedding day? When the news broke that Matt and Karen were not invited, fans had strong opinions. Some praised Amy for setting boundaries, others felt she was still holding a grudge and should have extended an olive branch for the sake of the family. Amy deserved